Well, let's start the meeting. I'll go through and call off the roll call here just for who's in attendance right now, just like we've been doing the last couple of meetings. So we have myself, Councilor Moody, Councilor Swearingen, Councilor Kennedy. For councilors in attendance, we also have City Attorney Chris Hood, Finance Director Kim Dunsmore, City Administrator Mike Roth, and we are honored to have a special guest tonight. Dave Tiersteg from the park is here with us as well. So that's everybody that we have. Oh yeah, I said Chris was on the call. Everybody that we have on the call right now. This is our weekly emergency check-in meeting for the COVID-19 emergency. So we can really only discuss issues that have to do with the COVID-19 emergency. Next Wednesday's meeting, is that correct? Yes, next Wednesday's meeting will be our regular meeting. So we will have more information, more business to deal with at that meeting. But to keep going with the emergency update, today we have an update from the park, which is why Dave is with us. So unless, Mike, you want to do an introduction to this conversation, I would turn it over to Dave. So Mike, do you want to introduce it, or should we just toss it over to Dave and see what we got?
Let's let Dave go.
Okay, fabulous. Dave, you're on. Let's roll.
Okay, so Park Board met yesterday at 4 o'clock on the video conference. All members were present. We reviewed a memo that I believe you all have had a chance to take a look at. I put together for the May scenarios in the context of the stay-at-home order, in the context of the county, and the best practices for operating in this current pandemic. The conclusion to the memo was several scenarios for May, one of them being closed altogether, one of them being open for seasonals and not to overnighters, and a very slow and deliberate staged opening, no public offices, no public restrooms for May. There was sort of a hybrid version of that, was option 3, where we looked at seasonals for May, no overnighters the first 3 weeks of May, and a reevaluation the first week of May on the Memorial Day weekend. Quite a bit of discussion about the stay-at-home order, what that actually means. The legalities of that have been discussed at the state level quite a bit. Well, just today received further clarification, but it reinforces the 2 items that were presented in the memo last week, which were, if you're a monthly seasonal campground, you're able to operate. If you're an overnight recreation campground, you are not. And so in the context of that, we entertain the idea of operating for monthlies and seasonals in May. Motion did not pass. It was a 3-2 split fail vote on a motion to open for seasonals in May. There was a new motion that was contingent on the stay-at-home order and the lifting of that. Once that was lifted, we would be open for seasonals. There was a preliminary second, then it was rescinded. So there was no vote on that second motion to open for seasonals contingent on the stay-at-home date. And then a final motion to effectively table a decision, a motion to delay a decision, table a decision, was passed unanimously. This was in context of the campground, the marina. The golf course was a much easier discussion. It went quick. The motion was early to open for May, weather dependent, in a restricted manner. We're very slow in May anyway. We do seasonal member local traffic in May. So there was a motion to open in May at the Gunflint Hills course when the weather permits. It's usually mid-May, and that passed unanimously.
So Dave, with the governor's announcement this afternoon talking about campgrounds and things and more of an explanation, does that change anything, do you believe?
Not from what we were understanding as of last week, right? The ruling was further clarified, but for our position of offering both monthly seasonal and overnight recreation, we knew that going into the meeting last night that we cannot operate as a recreation overnight park when stay-at-home is in place. we can operate as a monthly seasonal park. And that's been consistent for the last week or so, that the clarifications have been coming from the state.
So if the restrictions are not continued after May 4th, would we then be open for monthly seasonals?
We could be potentially open for both. So that I think to reiterate, the stay at home allows us to operate for monthlies today or May 1st. And certainly if the stay at home is extended, we have those same conditions for monthly operations. They're still allowed. It's the recreation overnight that would be the difference in stay at home versus not. If the stay at home is extended throughout the entire month of May, we cannot feature overnight camping, recreation camping.
Okay, so what was the board's concern or reasons for not wanting to open to the seasonal then in May, if we would be allowed to do that?
The intentions and the messaging of the stay at home. I think what I took away from the discussion was that irregardless of the fine print and the legalities of stay at home and seasonal versus overnight, the intentions and the message to not travel, to, not put the community at greater risk through exposure, through greater travel. And there was a more of a community minded set to protect the community, to protect the staff. I think to delay the decision and to be consistent with the governor's intentions of stay at home.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, considering the messaging that's been coming out of the rest of the communities on the North Shore, that's pretty consistent, I think. With the state, like the stay-at-home order is kind of what we're all queuing on. By the way, we've got Craig, Councilor Schulte has joined us too, so he's on the call too.
I got in. So.
Well, I watched the park board meeting last night, not the whole thing. And it was an interesting discussion for sure. And I think what I got, and maybe Dave and Craig too, you could pipe up if I'm misremembering or maybe didn't understand, but it seemed like besides that, like what David said about the community aspect of it, the fact that the reality is there is an extension of the stay-at-home order, even if there is a change to what that means, like if certain industries are going to be able to come back a little bit, the idea of those, and it was only a handful of seasonals, if I remember right, like 2 to 6 or something was what the number, if I remember right from last night listening to the meeting, that are going to be affected by that. And those would be coming in to the middle towards the end of the month. So since the next park board meeting is basically pretty much lined up with, I think, isn't that lined up pretty close to when the stay-at-home order would clear? If for some reason those folks that were planning on coming in, those 2 to 6 people, if there was a change, Dave, it's not like there's 150 people that Dave would have to call. It would be something, if there was a change, he could still get a hold of them and say, like, based on the changes to the governor's order and what the outcome would be at the follow-up park board meeting next month, we could still possibly get them in. So anyway, yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. I thought everybody did a good job of weighing out all the different, you can understand everybody's viewpoint for sure, but I thought it was a good conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Antian. And that is correct as far as the scale of the impact and the guests that are affected. In early May, the first 2 weeks of May, we really only have a couple of early snowbirds that are chomping at the bit. 2 to 6 is the accurate number for those first 2 weeks of May. Towards the end of May is where we see, the Memorial Day weekends, sort of a kickoff for a lot of seasonals, maybe another 20 or so in that last week of May. And as far as overnight traffic goes, the first 3 weeks of May is always very, very light. We have maybe 20 reservations right now for the first 3 weeks. We have 100 for Memorial Day weekend.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really tricky to try and wrap your head around exactly what this is going to look like in the next 2 weeks. There's some really big festivals and events that that have been already canceled around the world, not just in the United States. You know, so it's hard to know what's going to be acceptable and what's not going to be acceptable. But at some point, we're the ones who need to make the call for that. So it's yeah, it's interesting.
I think part of that's true, but I also think that the way that what they were talking about last night is, I mean, people coming in, seasonals coming in. If you're coming, it's more than likely not somebody pulling their RV down from in town.
Mhm.
It's somebody coming from somewhere else. And so, according to even though the campground's allowed to function right now, if those people are coming from Iowa or California or Florida or Arizona, that they, by mandate or by executive order of the governor, aren't supposed to be doing that. So,
Right.
That's actually not true. And just to point out why that's not true, I just had a neighbor from Florida come back last week. I mean, people at the meeting just came back from Arizona. Our community is seasonal in its character already. And one of the things that the governor's order, why it excludes campgrounds like ours with seasonal folks, is because the character of that is a lot more residential. Some of those people maybe don't have a backup plan for housing. So it's not the same as just traveling here for recreational purposes for all of them. For some of them, it probably is, but not for all of them, which is why the governor's order actually does allow us to operate the seasonal aspects of our campground.
For the long-term renter. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, and we're still in the stages of our operations where the consequences of not being allowed to operate are manageable. Dave's memo really lays out nicely what we would have expected May to look like, I think, if all other things were equal, which of course they weren't. Our operations in May, we spend $5,000 on part-time staffing and another 4 or 5 on utilities that we probably won't spend. So there's a little bit of savings that goes along with that. When it gets to June, then our last year anyway, we made almost $130,000 in daily rentals. So just to put that in perspective, that's more than we paid our entire seasonal staff at the park in 2019. So if we lose that revenue, I mean, obviously we'll also have some reductions in expenses, but unfortunately that might be people's employment. For us, that's not necessarily a financial savings, because if they qualify for unemployment, we're not necessarily going to see that savings. So hopefully our employees will be able to get through that, but our organization will definitely feel that pinch. And then July, we made almost $180,000 in nightly revenue. This is the same story that a lot of local businesses are dealing with right now. So, we don't need to push the envelope any more than anybody else does. We're participating with the business community that's discussing with the health community right now what's the right way to navigate this, because it's really hard decisions for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mike,
Sorry, Jay. I wanted to let Dave know I did not get that memo, and I don't know if it's missed because I have an underscore in my name, but I would really love to have that sent to me.
It came from me, Kelly. I attached it to the update that I had sent on Friday.
Last Friday. Okay. Yeah, I got that.
I looked at it on my phone, so maybe I didn't see that piece of it. I will go back.
If you don't have it, let me know. I'll forward it to you again.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got it.
So, Mike, my question is, so speaking about the employees and the hiring for the for the campground for the summer and our seasonal employees, have we continued to move on with, or, you know, to hire those seasonals as applications come in, or have we put a hold on that?
Dave, maybe you want to take that up for what's going on right now, and then I'll talk about what we're going to do in the next few weeks after that.
Sure. So we've got a core of returning seasonals, at least 4 of our core veteran, lucky to have them, responsible adults that we need to give an update very shortly on as far as if we need them to start or not for May. We typically are starting next week to get things ready. And so for just a handful of our returning seasonals, we need to let them know. We are able to open with that 4 or 5 core team. We've also got the full-time facilities manager on now. And so, you know, we're pretty well staffed for the first month. It's June, July, August that we need to staff up for. We started the hiring process right before this. A month ago is when we started to run ads. We had minimal response. I think I have 1 application. I just got some applications for the golf course, but we haven't had a lot of luck in the recruitment and collection of applications for the probably 4 to 6 seasonal positions that we would ideally need to fill for June, July, and August. And now with this increased awareness, and I think it's going to be a challenge to operate. In fact, staff is going to be not only harder to come by, but we'll need more of it if we're going to be cleaning bathhouses more and socially distancing more. And there's a real human factor here. You're right. There's a real staff factor that we feel short, and particularly in light of increased responsibilities and procedures and protocols.
Okay.
So as it's becoming clear that this is a very long-term, potentially entire season-long issue that we're going to have to deal with, one of the things that department heads are going to be doing starting in the first week of May is talking about what our expense contingency plans are going to look like if we do take some serious revenue hits. I don't think it's worth doing a lot of speculating right now, but just some ideas for the campground that, and, you know, not saving money ideas, but what things that we spend money on right now, just for information's sake. We have about $137,000 in the rec park's capital budget that we plan on accumulating in a fund that we use to fund capital projects.
Mm-hmm.
That fund has money in it right now. We probably won't be doing any significant capital projects this year. And so that's probably one of the first things that a person might look at is we're going to have to be deferring capital projects in departments. We spend about $100,000 on part-time staff. And, you know, hopefully that's not something that we'll have to have anybody that was expecting work not have work from us. But like Dave suggested, we may not be able to fill all those positions just because of where people are at right now. We spend another $80,000 on utilities, and it's hard to say what we're going to spend on utilities at the rec park if we're not operating at capacity. We spend $40,000 to $50,000 on credit card charges that, you know, we're not getting the revenue. We're not spending that on credit card charges. So this is a big operation that certainly in any one year can absorb a pretty significant revenue hit, not without consequences, but without dire consequences anyway. That we're also looking at all the other revenue sources that the city's experiencing potentially getting hit. And I think it's time for us to start giving you some ideas of what that might look like. So like I said, come May, our regular department head meeting, we're going to start having those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation when we get to that point. Considering that we've been used to operating at a certain service level, assuming certain incomes that, you know, have just been built into the community, how the community operates. I know in the last couple of years we've been more conservative than in past years for how we assume those numbers. which may actually be kind of a negative thing right now, because that means that our cushion, the cushion that we may have built in for ourselves, is not quite as big. But as far as revenues are concerned versus expenses. But yeah, that's something that I'm definitely holding my breath on, waiting for that one. It'll be interesting to hear what the department heads come up with for that. As far as the park conversation, I believe that, Dave, your summary of the motions and what motions eventually got passed is very helpful to understand what was contemplated in that conversation. Is there anything else that the council should be thinking about in regards to the operation of the park for the summer? That's kind of where I'm wondering right now, because you guys seems like the park boards, they had a very robust conversation about it, really went over a bunch of different options, came to a conclusion, and now we're going to be sticking with that conclusion until we get better information. So what's next? What's the next thing?
Well, I want to give Craig the opportunity for input. If there's any insights from the meeting that Craig could share, I think this would be a good time. Craig, what was your takeaway from the meeting?
Well, I missed the first part of this conversation, but my takeaway from the meeting was, I think we've got to try to develop some type of plan to kind of ease into opening, or ease into, what we've got to try to do is open. I know we're following the governor's recommendation for long-term campers, and that's why I went along with the first motion, was to, open it for the long-term. It didn't really affect, it's not like we're letting in volumes of people. We're letting in a few people to come in to stay into their places that are there already. I don't know what the governor's going to do May 4th, if that's going to get extended into June or not. I don't know. But right now, the long-term camping is available for us to allow. I know there's a concern about the health issue and those things, but I also look at the age of these people that are coming up and staying in these campers, and obviously they don't, want to bring any sickness up here, and they don't want to be sick either. I just thought that easing, we got to have some way to ease into getting this, the park, kind of going a little bit. And weather isn't, we're dealing with different kinds of weather than southern Minnesota is dealing with right now. And a lot of our campgrounds up the trail obviously aren't being used right now, and they wouldn't be used right now even if they were open.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got to look at, May's around the corner. Like I said, the first couple weeks in May is not a big thing, not a big deal. But when you start getting into that last part of May and you got that first big holiday season of holiday weekend, we got to be kind of prepared for that. If, it's going to be something that is going to be, we're going to have business on the North Shore, or we're not going to. I don't know what the governor's going to do, but if the stay-at-home thing stays in place, or if he opens it up to different businesses that can be open, or bars and restaurants can be open, unlimited numbers of people, I don't know what's going to happen. But I didn't really have a problem with the park open up to the people who are waiting to get in the, the first part of May.
Mm-hmm.
Because it really wasn't, a lot of people, but it's kind of a way to get the ball going a little bit here. I'm concerned about the health issues, just like for me and my wife, especially, but I might be kind of a little different thinking than a lot of people in town right now, because I'm working inside a store every day. I'm seeing all kinds of tourists. I'm seeing all kinds of people that I've never seen before every day. And I guess maybe I'm just, you know, I don't know. It's just, I got a different attitude about it, I guess. Whether it's right or wrong, it's just that, you know, I see public, I deal with the public every day. It's not like I can't lock myself in the house and hide from it. I don't have that ability to do. So, so everybody's experiencing this differently, and it affects everybody differently. And I do understand that. And I respect everybody's, you know, attitude towards it. I really do. But I'm concerned about the park. I'm concerned about the revenue stream for the city. And hopefully we can get it open, and hopefully that certain conditions allow us to do that. It would be nice to do that. So I guess that's my feeling of it. I don't, you know, whatever you guys think, I you know, some of you listened to the meeting, and I don't think anything was right or wrong in the meeting. I just think, you know, there was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of thought about what should we do and how should we do it. And, you know, the golf course, we talked about the golf course, of course, and I think that's got a pretty good plan. I'm not too fearful about the golf course. And right now it's weather related anyway, so that's not going to get anything going on up there until middle of May, I would think. But I think that can be done at a pretty safe level of operation. I don't know. So let's throw it back to you guys on what you think about the rec park. I don't know, Dave, what I don't know. Dave's in contact with these people that are waiting to get into their places. And I don't know if that was something they immediately wanted to get into like in April, or was these people that wanted to start moving in May? Was there a time frame on some of that?
Yeah, May 1st is the traditional start of the season.
Okay. So these people kind of want to get up there and move in May. That's what they're thinking?
Yeah, about 2 of them.
2 of them? Okay. Yeah.
For
So
May
I mean,
1st. Although, you know, it's hard to say in this, you know, current state of affairs. There could be 6 of them. There could be 12 of them. We do have a sneaking kind of suspicion that people are checking the map and they're seeing where COVID is not, and they're calling. And I've had some real random inquiries into seasonals in the last couple of weeks. You know, new people calling, wondering, are we open now, and can we spend the summer there?
And the weather plays. You know, I just saw on the news tonight, the year my daughter Anna was born in 1990, it was 80 above today. So, I mean, the weather, if it was 80 above today, you'd have 500 people wanting to check in tomorrow. So,
yeah,
it's the weather has an issue, and where COVID is and COVID isn't. I mean, you're right.
And the to kind of piggyback on this with the Emergency Preparedness Committee had a meeting yesterday. Mike was on that call as well, where the hospital and the clinic and all of the other agencies from around the county weighed in on how things were going for them. And it was clear that the hospital and the clinic and the health services up in Grand Portage are working towards a state of readiness. And I think that was almost exactly the words that they used, was working towards a state of readiness, meaning that they're not there yet. You know, like when this thing comes to Grand Marais, the reality of that situation is that we're not completely ready. And that means having the PPE, having the treatment and available, you know, any kind of a plan for how to treat these people. And they're working really, really hard on that. And I have no fear that when this actually comes and gets into Cook County, if it's not here already, that we will be able to activate at a level that will keep things under control. But a lot of that keeping things under control is going to be shipping people away, you know, down to Duluth or other hospitals. And when you think about that in context to the populations that we're talking about coming up the shore to be in the campground, that to me seems really troubling, just due to the demographics of that population, the seasonal population, and the population that usually comes up and hangs out in the campground in the summer.
Right.
So I all that to say, I do definitely appreciate the thoughtfulness of the camp of the park board and their willingness to wait and to gather more information and to find out exactly where we're going. I know that that's probably not the answer a lot of people were looking for, but I do think it's a measured response, and I think that's I give you a lot of credit for that. Does anybody else have any other questions or anything else to say about the park board meeting or the status of the campground? Dave, do you have any closing comments, or anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay.
Well,
I just-
I'll just say this.
Yeah.
With a no decision, it means closed, right?
Yeah, it's a decision. Yeah.
So we're closed. The park
Un-
board is scheduled to meet on the 5th, on Tuesday the 5th. And,
Okay.
At that point we can look at it. We'll see where the governor's at. We'll see where the community's at. We'll definitely proceed with caution.
Yeah, I'm hoping that on that day we should have a lot more information to help guide us, I would think.
I hope so. Yeah.
So, and it's not urgent April right now. And I do understand we do have time to wait. And I think that we're lucky we do because of our seasonality up here. But, that's just looking into June and July. I just hope it's not going to be a big negative for everybody. It's not going to be good if that's the case, but we'll see. We hope that we have positive information by the 5th.
Yeah, I think just both the health implications and the economic implications are just going to get more and more serious as time goes on. I mean, as said, the pandemic is going to be with us for a long while, and we don't even know what that long while is. It's more than a month or 2 or 3, and
Could be into the winter.
well, and yeah, you just don't know that, and whether we can safely open our businesses or whether we become. I mean, if our doors are open and we see visitors coming from all over the country to bring whatever they have here, we've got really potential to see some serious implications that we may not be prepared to handle. I would suggest we're not prepared. The economic side, I mean, it's devastating for our local businesses that, we're small businesses. We don't have deep pockets to, buy our way through, this economic distress. So we have a lot of tough decisions to make. We are fortunate that maybe this happened at a time when we can at least try to at least put together a better plan and try to figure out how to come up with something that might be workable and help our businesses, but also help protect the health of our community.
Yeah.
Well, and I think sometimes as we talk about protecting the businesses, which we're responsible for, part of those businesses includes the employees. And that's where this battle becomes for me, is we have people that work in industries that they are not earning large dollars anyway. So the unemployment that they're now getting, granted, there is some extra money that comes along for some people with some of it, but eventually any young people in this community that are living or have been living making a wage off of tourism dollars are going to have to leave here potentially and go seek something else. And that's a concern to me. I looked at the law enforcement report that was listed on WTIP last week. It seems there's a number of domestic things that are listed there. We have children in our community that are vulnerable, where they want to be at school, where they feel safe and have some sense of normalcy and don't. So those things all play in as well. And it's really hard, I think, to be in our position trying to make a sound decision with all of these things going on, because it's more than one thing to consider, it's more than 5 things to consider. So I know that people kind of are drawing lines, but I haven't been able to draw a line because it's really difficult when you put everything together, trying to make decisions as to how to keep the economy going, but how to keep families surviving in our community. That worries me.
Yeah, and I think that that's a part of a larger conversation about, sustainability within Grand Marais, and this definitely has to do with the emergency situation, but keeping in mind the efforts that we've taken on in the past year to recodify the city code and to go and take a look at the Planning and Zoning Commission ordinances and documents, so that we can try and limit the restrictions that are placed on people who live here, or at least make them a little bit more sensible for what life up here looks like. These are the types of things that, it's probably a good thing that we didn't get too far down the road with some of those, because we might be changing, business as usual pretty significantly in an altered reality that we have now with this pandemic situation coming into the play. So that's certainly something that we should keep our eyes on. As far as what you're saying, Kelly, I totally agree with you. I think that the instance that we're in right now could have been a lot worse as far as timing and how the city is postured, with our reserves and with how we've been doing our budgets. It could be a lot worse. But we also have to keep in mind that this will get a lot worse if the people who live in our community really continue to suffer and continue to have, to have no work and to have limited resources and all of that. So they to me, it's kind of like a chicken and an egg kind of situation. One keeps chasing the other's tail, and we have to, at some point we're going to have to find a point to start with and just say, okay, we're going to start here and we're going to go for it. But during this emergency declaration, it's really hard to do that because we're still just gathering information. So that's, yeah, it's going to be a tricky thing. I think it's going to stick with us for the majority of our conversations in 2020. But it's important to have those things on the table and that we identify those as concerns. So. Does anybody else have any comments for Dave or about the park? Or if not, then I'll ask Mike and Kim if they have any further updates. I think that was the main one for this meeting, was just to get the park board stuff out so that we can talk about it and then keep moving up. So anything else about the park board? Hearing nothing. So then, Mike, do you have anything further for the updates, for emergency updates?
Did we have an update on the liquor store? How's that going? Or do we need to talk about that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't have an update in terms of updated financials for you to look at from.
Yeah, I'm not really. The financials are. I'm just kind of, is it going okay with the employees? And I mean, does that system seem to be acceptable and?
It's working. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. I was just making sure. I mean, I haven't, talked to too many people about it, but it's kind of nice to know that we got something implemented, so it's working anyway. So.
I mean, we don't have a lot of feedback methods here to know whether it's working for everybody, but it's working for us. So, and people are using it. I think that we're meeting the need that we need to. Obviously, it's not fully functioning, but it seems sustainable for us for now. So I'll let you know if that changes. I just want to say as staff, our role here has been to figure out how to get back up and running and how to do that safely. And that doesn't mean that we're necessarily advocating for doing that. We're looking to you for guidance on when that is appropriate. And obviously you're not the only ones that have to say in that. It's up to the state more than anybody else. So we're going to keep working on plans to do what Craig suggested, which is ease back into all of our operations. When the boards and when the council say that that's appropriate, then we'll be ready to go.
Yeah, and I do believe that for the liquor store, the mentality, at least that I'm assuming for the liquor store, is that we'll keep things operating the way that they're operating now until we have a different, a different reality from the state, where they start limiting the social distancing and the business rules and things like that. I have heard from a couple of people around town that from their first time buying stuff at the liquor store under this new practice to their most recent, that the efficiency has gotten much better, and that they feel like everybody's kind of settled into it. They understand what's going to happen now, and it seems to be working much smoother and working pretty well. So that's encouraging to hear from people as well. Mike, do we want to mention anything about the state takeaway rule? I mean, it's not really something that we need to discuss as per right now, but it's a reality that the state changed the law to respond to the COVID-19 situation that's going to impact the city in how our businesses and the city deal with alcohol. So
you should know that we already have local businesses that are operating with the new state rules. If anybody needs more information about what those are, I think everybody got out last week an update on what's allowed. We don't have to do anything. We can just continue to let those businesses function that way, or we can step in if you want to and opt out of those rules. Those rules expire when the governor's rules about whether restaurants and businesses can be open for business are in place.
So it's designed to be a temporary thing, and that's something that's important to keep in mind. But it's also a very different way of selling alcohol in the state of Minnesota. So I think it makes sense for us as a municipal liquor store organization to just know that that's going on. So that's all. Any other comments? Any other emergency updates or questions, areas of concern, things like that?